Hi there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth today. Thanks for joining us. If you're new to the channel, this is just one of many of the numbers. I would recommend that you go back and look at the series and probably start all the way through, because what I'm doing is actually basically giving a free tutorial on how a person can build out a numerology chart for themselves, and this is just part of it, it's not all of it. So today we're going to be talking about the relevance and influence of the number 4 on the birth chart. And if I could just encourage you at this moment, please do click the button to subscribe, click the bell to get notified if you like the content, because it helps me out as far as, and you guys know this, if you watch YouTube, I know that you know it, it helps us to actually get out there, get known and get recognized actually for the amount of hours that we put in. But the other thing is too, from my perspective, all the content that I put up here is designed to empower people to reach their potential. And the more people that we get the word out to, hopefully the quicker we will start to see some form of social or humanitarian change, humanitarian care and regard, because we're all working towards our potential. But anyway, I will move on and get straight into the content. Thank you. So in the first instance, when we look at number 4, it's an even number. So even numbers, of course, you'll know from previous videos, they are associated with the colour silver and what we refer to as feminine energetic attributes of nourish and nurturing. They're also associated with the gifts of intuition. And basically, just the feelings, even though when we look at the birth chart, we've got these higher aspects, if you like, associated with the number 4, but it's on the basic self physical body plane. So that would indicate just straight off the bat that the number 4 is about bringing those down onto the earth plane, those attributes. My interpretation would be that it's about walking the talk, actually. But going back to the plane here, the physical plane is the doing plane, and for the 4, this means that there's an orderliness attached to it, organisation and structure, because there is this practical approach to life through the physical plane and by the number 4. Just as a useful tidbit or lack of usefulness or whatever, depending on your life space where you walk and work and that kind of thing, for Pythagoras, the 4 was represented by what is called the right triangle, which is why I've put that image up to the right there. Oh, right, left, I mean on the left-hand side of the slide. Don't know my right from the left at the moment. Anyway, from a numerological perspective, if I can talk, the 4 is a number that reflects practicality and activity. So it's quite... or people with a 4 on their chart have a tendency towards materialistic pursuits. Generally, look, I say generally, and I just remind you that these are the positive attributes that I'm referring to here, because it can actually spin the other way. But generally, they're born with a desire to be tidy, practical and organised. But I can honestly say, having somebody in the family with a ruling 4, actually, that it can spin the other way. It can be very, very disorganised until they bring self-discipline into the picture. So when we talk about having 1-4 on the birth chart, then yes, we will see this desire or this natural inclination towards being practical and doing, and that orderliness that I spoke about. But the other thing is that they actually prefer to work with definites rather than theories, and they prefer to act upon their principles. They can become very impatient if there's unwarranted delays or if people procrastinate, which is really interesting if they're living in the negative aspects, because I would say they're a bit guilty of procrastination myself. But whether they're guilty of procrastination or not, they would prefer to just get on with the job, okay? If they've got a number 7 on their birth chart, that kind of compounds the 4 approach, where they can be a little bit dogmatic. And when they focus too much on the practicalities of life, then they can become really probably materialistic, to the extent where they can develop a hardness or a harshness to their personality. And if you're a parent of somebody with a 4 on the birth chart, then you would have a responsibility, I guess, to try and work with them and teach them to demonstrate patience, to avoid an unbalanced approach to materialism, and to develop the qualities of compassion towards others. Because when they can do this, this will help them to attain long-term friendships, because obviously this is something that they seek, to have quality friends in their physical environment, because of course it's underpinned by a desire for happiness. And we all know that, if people are a little hard, a bit impatient, intolerant, and too focused on the money as opposed to feelings, it's going to actually strain any potential friendships or relationships around them. From a parental perspective, this support becomes more important, the number of 2s on a birth chart, because as the energy of the 4 is escalated with additional 4s, their outlook can become unbalanced, with this unhealthy focus on what's happening materially for them, the pursuit of that financial gratification. And they've got to train themselves to maintain this balance between mind, body and spirit, because they definitely do have an eye for beautiful things, and they like to have beauty in their lives. And so there can be risks of impulse buying, which creates this need for, income generation. And from what I've observed, taking out additional credit cards and that kind of stuff, getting themselves into financial difficulties. So it's about working with them, or them working with themselves, to get a balance in the way that they approach the world, and they experience harmony of thought and feelings. And where there becomes a lack of balance, there can be this, what is referred to as cognitive dissonance. This is where the heart and the mind are in conflict. They're going in different directions. Their head's telling them they must do one thing, and then the heart's telling them to do something else. And this can lead to guilt because of their preference for the material world, which might come at the expense of relationships, which is actually not that uncommon. If they've got a ruling number that's on the spiritual or mental plane, then people with the 2/4s are going to find it easier to rise above this materialistic focus. So, that would explain, if you're looking at a birth chart of somebody that that has got the 2/4s, or for yourself and thinking, but I'm not materialistic, or I'm not that bad. There is this business of being able to balance with things like the astro, your sun sign, your moon sign, and of course what other numbers are on the chart and what your ruling number and day number is. This is all going to have an impact on it. And another way that you can actually address these materialistic tendencies is through the, because obviously with the birth chart, you can't actually adjust that. A person's born with the birth numbers or they're not. So anyway, you can actually address it through taking care with the picking out of the name and looking at the name numerology and the expressions associated with that. So obviously the issue with the 4 is that the more 4s on the birth chart, the greater need to balance that outlook on life, and the more care is needed actually in the choice and selection of friends, who they associate with and the company that they keep. Because unless they are very careful about their companionship, this can actually impact on their personality and make them harsh, which obviously is not particularly attractive. And the particular advice is that they should endeavour to steer clear of people that are hard drinking, and that they require sensitivity from friendships if they're to be successful in their lives and to retain this balance. And the reason why you would say they need to steer clear of people that are hard drinkers, which is a polite way of saying that potentially over imbibe, is because I guess the best way to explain it is because people with the 4 have this tendency, they're not afraid to work hard. And if there's 2 4s or more 4s involved in the birth chart, they could easily adopt that attitude of work hard, play hard, which leads to 2 really intense aspects of life and little attention paid to the higher self spiritual plane. And of course, if somebody is a work hard, party hard, that will end up taking its toll on the body anyway. So yes, you would discourage them from associating with people that don't know how to put boundaries on their own behaviours. Where there are 3/4s on the birth chart, these people can really struggle to rise above this idea that they need to have physical and material gratification. And even if they're aware of the risks, associated, which could lead to damaged relationships and that kind of thing, they will struggle to lead a balanced life, but they're very easily tempted back into this pattern of work, 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 and building the financial nest egg that they like. They need a lot of support to maintain this strong willpower and to be receptive of guidance and care from those around them, because they may feel this constant pull to get back in and work. Now, the other thing that I have failed to mention is that often for the 4, they will do manual labour. They like to work with their hands. And so their lesson is to realise and master that the materialism and this hard work is part of life, and not allow themselves to become enslaved is the word that I'm looking for, because they're not actually enslaved to work. They're not forced to work, but they choose to work because they've got this almost obsessive desire to build this material nest egg, or to have the toys, I guess, that you get from hard work, like those. An example would be the person that has got all the latest mod cons and toys, and some are beautiful, some are practical, some are just fun to have, because I guess in a way their sense of self-esteem can be based on what they have as opposed to who they are. So it's very easy for themselves to fall into this trap of work, work, work. And the problem here, of course, is if they are of the manual work, doing labouring and that kind of stuff, that's going to have negative impacts upon their physical body as well. It will put strain. There's risks of, wear and tear on the joints and things like that. They must be mindful not to relate everything to this callous physical work. And then on the other hand, I've put down, of course, there's the potential for OCD, because they can actually fall into this trap of there's got to be order, and it can be almost compulsive if their environment isn't exactly as they would like it to be. Then that can throw them into a bit of a spin and curveball. And referring to the manual labour and the toll that can take on the body, this generally manifests as weakness in the lower limbs. So they would be advised to take care of their knees, ankles and feet, particularly if they not only work hard, but if they become obsessive using sport and exercise as a means of stress relief, because this would be one of the issues as well. So basically where we're going with this is, as parents, if you've got a child that's got 3/4s on their birth chart, you really would be striving to teach them a balance that they are important, to work on their self-esteem and help them realise that there's more to life than what they've got in their environment. It's not all about money and having beautiful things or fun things around them. So, to be honest, where 4/4s are concerned as being on the birth chart, the last time this sequence would have occurred would have been on the 24th of April in 1944. And interestingly, the next time it occurs will be on the 4th of April in 2044. So we've got a few years before we get to that for sure. Anyway, anybody that has a child in this year or with that birth date, they'll need to take special care. I'm just doing this actually for fun, because obviously it's got no relevance to right here and now. They'll need to take special care that these people really learn these lessons of balance, because of course it's so escalated, this desire to work and manifest in the material pursuits under this vibration, that there really is a case of, if they don't modify and adjust their behaviours and they throw themselves into this physical work, there is a risk of temporary or permanent incapacitation, and it would most likely occur in the area of being able to walk. So we're talking mobility. So they would need to also demonstrate extreme patience. Well, actually, not so much them. We would need to, those people around them would need to have extreme patience with interacting with them. Actually, there's probably people that are still alive today with this, that may have been born on the 24th of April. They would be very highly skeptical of anything that would be metaphysical, because they need things to be tangible and physical. And the risk with this particular sequence, of course, is that they can actually become really one-eyed pragmatists. They're just so practical. If it doesn't serve a practical purpose, they're just not interested at all. And the other thing is, they can be so incredibly boring to be around for the rest of us. So that's just something out there for consideration. Where there's a missing 4 on the birth chart, there can be a lot of impatience within that person. And until they learn to manage that impatience and frustration, it will be directed towards people in alignment basically with whatever the ruling number is. So for example, if a person's ruling number is to do with metaphysical and spiritual or cultural or whatever, they may become impatient towards those people who decide that they're not interested in developing their metaphysical gifts, for example, or if they deny spirit, or if they are perhaps insular, they like the creature comforts of their home, and they're not interested in travel or culture or whatever. They don't see the benefits of it. So a person with a ruling 7 might become impatient with that demographic if they've got a missing 4. So yeah, it's you would look at the key purpose or functions of the ruling number. So 6 is involved with creativity. I'm not going to go through all of them here, but just that is the area that the person will exhibit the impatience. And if they've got an arrow of intellect on their birth chart as well, the person with the missing 4 is probably going to become very impatient with people who perhaps struggle to emotionally regulate. They just will find it difficult to really overcome, I guess, the behaviours of others. So it can exhibit a certain amount of lack of compassion even towards people, until they overcome this by really paying attention to having care and concern for other people's needs. It doesn't make them selfish, it just makes them frustrated, more easily frustrated, I guess, and impatient is the only really word to describe it. So just in case you missed that, the missing 4 is about being impatient towards other people until they develop the social skills and the maturity to be able to shift past it. But the way that they exhibit their impatience will be related to their birth sign. Actually the birth sign will be part of it, their astro sun sign, whether or not they have arrows on their birth chart. If they've got arrows on their birth chart, that's going to influence the direction of impatience for the person, and also their ruling number. So those are the influencing factors. So just a reminder, with an isolated number, it's where there's no surrounding numbers next to it. So we can see, looking at this birth chart here, that you've got the 4. There's no number 1, 2, 5, 7 and 8. So what we're looking at here is a birth chart that's not going to happen until year 3000 at the very least. But we could just, for the fun of it, look at this and go, well, what does this actually say? Well, it actually says that they're really going to struggle to access their higher self capacity and to have anything to do with the spiritual type of things, because they're so fixated, they're so in their head. Actually, I think they would struggle very much to be grounded and actually do anything but think. They would be so analytical. They'd probably have, it's an arrow, by the way, that is actually, I think, the arrow, well, it's the arrow, one of the arrows on the mind plane, and we've got a few of those which we'll be talking about in the future, but that shows obviously very analytical. They would be pulling everything apart and completely suppressing anything to do with emotions and feelings, unless of course this was reflected in their ruling number. So just a point of interest, but we don't have to worry about it at least until the year 3000, and I think these videos will be gone way by then. So, just for a little bit of fun, it's not got anything to do with the number 4 specifically. In fact, very little to do with it. Um, but basically, because I've said that I will look at the new generation of young people that are coming out in their birth charts, because I find them to be so interesting personally. And hopefully, you can see straight away when you look at this birth chart of Mia Grace Tindall that there's a lot of missing numbers on this chart, and a lot of her generation will have missing numbers, and we'll talk about what that actually means for them. Now, if you're not aware, Mia Grace Tindall is actually the daughter of what's her name? Mike Tindall and Zara. Okay, and Zara, of course, is Zara Phillips, and she is the daughter of the Princess Royal, Princess Anne. So royal family without a royal title, because Princess Anne chose not to give the titles to her children. So what we're looking at here is the granddaughter of a princess. So in the first instance, you may have looked at or seen a little bit about Mia Tindall. She actually looks like such a cute, bubbling little personality, and I'm sure she is. But so to look at her birth chart, we can see that, first of all, she's a Capricorn. She's very earthy. She's very practical. This is what's indicated by Capricorn. From the individual perspective, if she hasn't got there yet, what we can tell from this birth chart, her ruling number and day numbers and that, is that there will be a fascination with culture and travel for this little girl as she matures, and she will quite likely start to develop an interest in the theosophical and metaphysical subjects of life. Now, if I was the parent here, or the advice to parents would be to not shield her from consequences to her actions, because this is how she's going to be able to learn, and it's likely that she will actually rebel against external discipline. So she needs to learn from experience, and experience includes learning the consequences to action. She's going to be quite assertive. She will, obviously, based on the numbers I'm talking about here, of course I don't know the little girl personally, so I can't confirm if it's correct. Who knows, one of the royal family might actually put a comment up saying, yes, this sounds like this little girl. Anyway, the numbers indicate that she's going to be assertive. She'll have humanitarian regard. She'll care about people. I would imagine she drives her parents crazy, or if she's got a nanny, she probably drives them absolutely bats, because she will have a lot of questions. She's going to have that little magnetic personality that attracts people, and I think we see that in the photos, because she looks fun and sweet. But this other aspect that is shown here is that she's going to have quite independent traits. It will be, she has to do things her way, and she could even, well, I shouldn't say could, the numbers indicate that she could most definitely be quite forceful in achieving her goals. Now, her ruling number is a compensation for the fact that there is an absence of numbers on that mind plane. And I bet you her parents are so grateful for that, because honestly, with the absence of numbers on the mind plane, that's about memory and memory retention and short attention span. So it's no surprise when we look at this absence on the chart that so many young ones born in this generation are diagnosed with conditions such as attention deficit disorder and that kind of thing. But best case scenario, they would have the memory of a sieve, and the parents would be on their case every morning as they're getting them ready for school, saying, have you got your lunch? Did you do your homework? Have you packed your homework? There would be this constant having to remind them. So parents will, more so than at any time in the past, will need to be working with them to help them develop the skills of concentration and also memory recall, and they will probably feel like a broken record. I mean, when we're talking about a life path, okay, we're also talking about learning lessons over the life path. It can take many years to learn it. So the sooner we parents start working with the young ones to teach these skills, the better the outcomes are going to be. Other indicators in this chart is that her gifts will include this capacity to be able to express, and she'll have great versatility there, and she'll probably be quite gifted doing verbal or written communication. She's got a naturally intuitive sense that would normally indicate that she's a good judge of character. However, okay, there's a bit of an issue here that what is referred to as a good judge of character is actually potentially undermined by the blue arrow that's down on the physical plane, that of the body, because that plane, or people with this sequence or this arrow, they're quite vulnerable to being exploited by other people, because she trusts, or they tend to trust, the wrong people. And this is because they're so kind. And when I say trust the wrong people, it's people that would be wanting to emotionally manipulate them. Because they're so kind, they can prey on that kindness. So, I mean, the benefit of this, though, with her numbers in a chart is that while there's this vulnerability, it's counteracted to a level because of the good judgment, which would indicate that over the life path that she might get drawn in initially, but it won't take her long to realise what's going on, that she is being exploited. And that is a really good thing. It's very, very important for her to be able to learn this and to balance I guess, her view and her perspective, and to learn to be able to sit back and, I guess, really work on boundaries in relationships, I guess, which is that friendship circle stuff, establishing the nature of those friendships and whether or not people have got agendas. And we don't have to become paranoid when we're doing this. This just becomes a case of sitting back and assessing, how healthy is this friendship, So this is one of the things that she would need to do and to learn fairly early. Now, of course, there is, because she's got the ruling number of 7, there is the sacrifice associated with this ruling number. So that is going to be something the parents are going to have to take on board, or her caregivers, I say, which is to teach her to be able to be flexible and adaptable to changing circumstances. That's going to be really one of the core lessons that, for her own greater good, that she will need to learn, because otherwise it's going to have quite negative impacts on her based on the numbers. Anyway, as a doing person, because that's what that body physical plane refers to, she's also got to learn, because she will be so active, that there is this need for her to develop internal peace. And because she is so physically active, it's about learning how to sit still and learning how to feel or sit in silence and peace. And this will be very beneficial for her as part of overcoming any fears and any pessimism, particularly if she desires to really develop her intuitive gifts, because there is links and associations within this birth chart and her numbers that she could actually develop or go along the pathway of becoming a spiritual mystic if this was part of her desire. An interesting thing here that will probably make most parents' hair curl or stand on end is one of her life lessons will include learning faithfulness, and this lesson is generally learned through the activity of promiscuity. Yes, and did you hear me hesitating with that? Because I think any of us that are mothers of young girls and seeing them grow into adults, and I'm sorry if this sounds a bit traditionalist, and I'm not sure that that was a sincere apology on my part, is that we want our daughters to grow up and realise that they're more than just a body, and to treat their body with respect and recognise and value their physicality, their spirituality, and of course their intellectual ability. So with her, that might be a bit of a challenge, and that might be something that the parents have got to address and work with her on. But either way, it's all part of the life path. It's all part of growing up. And at the end of the day, what we're looking at here, I could go into this birth chart more. There's other things for us to look at, which of course we won't look necessarily at her birth stuff in the future videos, but definitely this is not a conclusive numerological report, okay, because there's more stuff that comes into play. But definitely Mia would have this independence about her, and there is this need to really focus on developing compassion and that kind of stuff, so that she doesn't allow herself to become bitter and impacted by the negatives of life or life's challenges in ways that she would become harsh. I mean, this is all practical advice to anybody anyway, but there is, within certain charts, it shows higher risk, say, of certain behaviours. So not everybody's birth chart, for example, is going to indicate learning faithfulness because of promiscuity. But in this particular instance, based on these numbers, yes, this is a definitely on the cards type of thing, if we were going to say that. So parents would work to be teaching self-respect at an early age. Anyway, moving on. At this point in time, I'm going to say thank you for being part of my journey. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I will love you, leave you, and catch you on the number 5 on the birth chart, the next video that I'll be loading. In the meantime, have a wonderful week, wonderful day. If you like the content, do press like and subscribe, leave a comment, ask questions. It helps us with the algorithms, and I will always respond to your questions. Okay, take care for now. Bye-bye.